Okay, Zoe, how was the skiing?
It was cold. Usually when we're in Craftsbury, around the same time of year, it's like 20 to 30 degrees, and this time it was like 10 plus or minus 2 degrees, and that makes a big difference.
I'm so surprised you still went. I saw the weather headlines and was like, I'm staying inside this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, between that and the race that was going on at the ski lodge, it definitely like threw off our mojo. Like typically we just like go out all day as a herd, and like the stragglers are straggling and the people up front will like stop randomly and wait, but like it all fell apart, and that's fine.
You still had fun?
Yeah, it's really hard to cross country ski. I want to get better at it, but it's so hard.
My parents went cross country skiing this weekend too. Apparently someone around here, so come visit me. We'll go skiing. So before we get started, I can intro. This is Aftermash, the podcast where we talk about what life is like after we were kids playing the game of MASH, trying to predict the future. And the spoiler alert is it wasn't nearly as straightforward as we thought it would be. And so that's what we're here to talk about. I am Jackie, a data analyst by day, and I like asking and answering questions a lot. And I'm joined by
Zoe. I am Jackie's college friend. We're not sisters, although you might be thinking that. I am a doctor and I listen to podcasts every day. They dictate my week. I know what day of the week it is by what podcast has shown up on my feed.
And this one will soon join the weekly rotation, bi-weekly rotation, and then you'll know what day it is with our podcast too. Cool. So I want to start today, before I get into the episode, by telling a little bit of a story about something that happened today, and we'll see if it winds up being relevant. There's been a lot of snow recently, as of when we're recording this episode, and in New England there is a practice of using space savers when people have street parking, and then they clean off their car and then they move their car. They want to reserve that parking spot, and so they put something in it. Zoe, do you remember this practice?
I do, and I just saw a headline on it and like whether it should be legal. It's obviously like not illegal. The law has nothing to do with it. I personally think that like you shouldn't have to respect that. That's bullshit.
You shouldn't have to respect the space saver?
Correct. You left. Like you can't call fives on a parking spot unless it's like actually your parking spot.
Yeah, I feel that way too. And I am going to share my screen. The picture on the right is an example of a space saver that I saw when I was out on my walk, which is exactly what we were talking about. It is somebody who cleaned off their car and then they moved their car and then they just put like a chair or something where their car used to be so that when they're at work, nobody else comes along and takes the spot.
A full workday? Are you kidding me?
Oh my God. Yeah, there have been some of these spots that have been empty for like multiple days in a row. Like the car is never there. I go on walks in my neighborhood all the time.
I'm buying cars just to put in these spots. This is ridiculous.
Yes, thank you. So Zoe, could you read the note that I took a picture of on my walk yesterday that is the other picture? Sorry, I didn't warn you. You didn't wear your glasses. I believe in you though.
Think carefully before moving this chair. I have plenty of time. There's plenty of snow, and I have 0 Fs to give. That's clear. However, you clearly don't have plenty of time because you're not sitting in your house just staring at your parking spot. You left your house.
Yeah, you've moved your car, so clearly you're not here. So yeah, anyhow, I wanted to start with this because I was on a walk with my boyfriend earlier and we were passing all of the space savers and I started going down this exact rant with him. And I was just like, I hate this. I hate that we do this. People who do this are so selfish. This is just like, so frustrating. This is like one of my least favorite parts about New England. And he just kept being like, hey, I agree with you that this doesn't feel particularly like generous of people, but also like he kept pushing back and I kept being confused by his pushback because he was saying that he was agreeing with me. But as the conversation kept going and kept going and kept going and we kept kind of circling around that idea.
It's because he had a space saver in his parking spot as he came to visit you.
No, luckily he has a garage parking, so he's never had to deal with space savers himself. He's always lived in a place that had a driveway or a garage, so I'm very jealous. But at the end of the conversation, he finally said something that made it click for me, where he was like, I'm just surprised that you're not expressing empathy for the people who are using them, since they're using them in an area where this is like such a accepted practice. Like,
and that's the problem.
Yeah, well, so that's the problem, but that really was like the light bulb moment for me of like, oh, like I can personally find this to be a really frustrating practice, but the problem isn't the individual person choosing to use the space saver. The problem is the cultural, milieu that encourages and accepts the space savers, the fact that we all respect each other's space savers. And the thing that I'm frustrated about the space savers, if we have any, Boston listeners who are like, I use space savers, how dare you be accusing me of being selfish? I don't think you're necessarily selfish. What I do get frustrated by is I'm also walking around the neighborhood and there are a lot of parking spots that didn't have cars in them during the snowstorm and then were never cleaned out. And so we went from having, call it 100 parking spots to like, I don't know, like 80. And of those 80, now all of them are claimed by chairs, when we could have just cleaned out the other 20 parking spots and then had the same number of parking spots all along. And then we wouldn't need to be very like resource scarce about them. But when my boyfriend was pushing back, I realized that blaming the person who puts the chair in the parking space in a culture where putting a chair in a parking space is normal misses the point. It's not about the person in the chair. It's about the fact that we collectively don't feel like there's a problem. We're not collectively taking responsibility for cleaning out those empty parking spaces, making sure that there's an abundance of parking. There aren't viable alternatives for this person who, like, this is the one spot they cleaned out. And if they lose it, then, like, there isn't the other spot that's cleaned out. So, all that to say, with today's topic, I'm hoping to take a little bit of that, like, nuanced approach to it of, like, we are all people in society and that society has rules. And so it makes sense that you are behaving in a way that conforms with that society, even when somebody on the outside could look at that and go, wow, that's pretty crazy. But at the end of this episode, Zoe, I want you to tell me if I am walking that line well or if I still come out guns blazing.
That's fair. I think it's also just a good allegory for the podcast in general.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to start with it. So Zoe, I just put the mashboard up on the screen. I really should have warned you to wear your glasses. Could you describe what we're looking at here, who this person is that we're going to be talking about today?
This person lives in a mansion. They are married to Travis Kelce, which must suck. They are a pop star.
I wonder who we're talking about.
We're really inviting the criticism we never asked for. And the cut is elongated old mine, and it is a whopping 10 carats. It must be so heavy.
It is rather large. What are we talking about here, Zoe?
Well, I know you're not a Swiftie, and for the record, neither am I. Please be kind to us. We're talking about engagement rings because I know you and I know that this is probably one of your first soapboxes.
Oh my gosh, yes, this is, I feel as strongly about this as I do about space savers. So yeah, we're talking about engagement rings, and I made this a Taylor Swift reference because she recently made headlines for how large and potentially expensive her ring was. I'm going to put that on the screen, and then we're finally going to be done looking at screens for a little bit. This is her new engagement ring. Can you describe what it looks like, Zoe?
It's large. It looks good on her finger. It is a rather thick band, and that's coming from someone who has a dainty band. And it's reflective.
Yeah. Would you describe this shape as a typical shape that you see on engagement rings or a unique one?
Definitely unique. It's like if pyramids had 6 sides on their base instead of 4.
It is very unique. That is because this is a diamond from the 17 or 1800s. It is considered an old mine cut diamond, which means that it was, from back in the day before the diamond industry really took off, which was around the 1890s into the early 1900s. And so this is an heirloom piece, and it was rumored to be as expensive as a few million. But not everybody's engagement rings are that expensive. I just thought it was really interesting that she makes a lot of headlines, but she also made headlines in particular for the ring itself. And so I thought that was a good way to intro. Well, why are we talking about the ring? Why do we care about this particular social phenomenon? Where did it come from? What do we learn about it? As I mentioned, I have a lot of strong feelings about it, but I think part of the joy of growing older is learning how to put your feelings in context and understand, like, you know, my feeling is my opinion. It's based on some facts. Other people have different opinions based on other facts. But like, how do we kind of like take a step back and look at all of them and understand the space in general? Because this is expensive, and diamond engagement rings are typically the third most expensive thing that an American family will own behind their house and their car. And so given that, how do we understand why they do that, and like what was the right decision for them to make? So first, Zoe, I would love you to describe for us what your journey was towards having an engagement ring. And like, don't take me on the relationship journey, just take me on the ring journey. Like, how involved were you in this? How surprised were you by the ring? How happy are you with it? That sort of thing.
I was too involved in the journey. I was not surprised by the ring, and I am still very happy with it.
Sounds like you were successful then. That's kind of what you want. I mean, maybe not too involved, but to have gotten a ring that you're really happy with sounds like a success. What do you mean by too involved? What were you hoping for?
Apart from just like wanting a nice piece of jewelry, I wanted the engagement because I wanted the grand gesture. My husband is not one who gives grand gestures ever. He also doesn't like change. He is an engineer, if that sounds right to you. And I felt like I was really forcing him down a path, not in the sense that he wasn't ready and that it wasn't going to happen, but in the sense that I was just like, let's move on. Like, I'm sick of being boyfriend and girlfriend. Like, I want the ring. I want the wedding. It's time to transition here, bud. Like, come on.
You guys have been together a while, and your relationship was definitely serious enough for that next step. It was just a matter of getting him to realize that. Okay, so that makes sense. So there was a lot of you being like, hey, here's the type of ring I want. Here's what I want. Like, you should like get your act together. That sort of thing.
Show me you love me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that speaks to a lot of the stories I've heard from other people.
Growing up, did you think about your wedding day? Like, did you think about it at all?
I don't think I was as caught up by that as other people. I know that my parents' wedding day was a big deal for them. We would watch their wedding videos sometimes. They had their big wedding picture on the wall. I think I always just assumed I'd have one, and like I definitely fell for the Disney movies, but I don't think I had particular visions in my head, which then means that as I learned about the diamond engagement rings, I think it was easier for me to be like, it's not like I'm like denying myself by deciding that I'm not the biggest fan of them. It's more of like, it was just something I never super explored in detail. I will say I am a year into a relationship right now, and I've definitely started thinking about like, oh yeah, like at some point I would like us to be taking those steps. Like I do want a marriage, and I would like that to come in the form of like, you know, a man being like, hey, I really want to spend the rest of my life with you. And so like I still am drawn to a lot of the trappings of that process. Did you think about it?
Like you, I think it was just an assumption. I didn't think of like a perfect wedding day. I just kind of assumed that I would go down the traditional path of finding a husband and having a wedding day.
Did it go as you expected, or because you didn't have too many specific expectations, it was more of just like you got the grand gesture, so you got the thing that you were looking for and the details were less important?
No. In typical Zoe fashion, I over-controlled the engagement. It was not a grand gesture, so that's my karma. And the wedding day was perfect, but that's a story for a different time.
Yeah. Okay. That would be a really good extra episode at some point. Zoe's wedding story is quite the journey. But okay, focusing on the engagement ring now. So I think that is a pretty good intro for like generally why people want them. I want to take us back in time to when the practice of diamond engagement rings was first invented so that we can understand for how long people have wanted them and under what context they first became a thing. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. This is information that you can find online pretty easily, so I don't think I need to go line by line, but diamonds used to be super rare. They were only found in a couple places. They were really hard to mine. In the late 1800s, a lot more mines were discovered, and this led to all of the little mines consolidating together into one conglomerate called De Beers, and they wound up controlling 90% of the diamond industry. This was the late 1800s. They were really afraid of the price of diamonds going down because now there were so many more of them. And so by consolidating, they could form a monopoly, they could control the prices, and they could artificially induce scarcity by holding on to most of the diamonds and only releasing a select number at a time, which kept the prices high.
Where was this headquarters?
This is in South Africa.
And they were controlling the global market of diamonds.
Because there was a giant mine that was discovered there. There are a few pockets in the world where diamond mines are discovered, but that was the biggest one at the time. And then because they wound up getting so rich from that, they were able to, buy up all the other mines in other areas. But
living the dream.
They really were. They owned a lot of diamonds. They kept an artificial scarcity. And then they kept this going for 50 years or so. They had some turnover. The founder passed it on to his son, that sort of thing. And then around the 1930s, the company said, oh, what if we wanted to make more money? How do we do that? We still want to keep this artificial scarcity high price thing, but we want to find a larger market. And they looked around at the world in the 1930s and they said, well, Europe's kind of recovering from the war. They're not really in a position to be spending a lot of money on diamonds. A lot of the rest of the world isn't developed enough to have expendable income. Let's talk about the US. And so then they looked at the US and said, oh, this is a good market.
What about the Great Depression, which was famously 1929, right?
Yeah, I think this was like after the recovery from the Great Depression, like right around that uptick. But they wound up partnering with a marketing agency, and that marketing agency said, oh, you know what you need to do if you want to sell more diamonds? You have to link them to something that is not about the diamond at all. You need to make it a very emotional purchase that people feel like they have to do. It has to become a rite of passage. It has to be something that people don't ever want to give back. And so they said, what about engagements? And right around this time, there were some laws in the US called the breach of promise to marry, which gave women the ability to sue their ex-fiancés if their exes called off the wedding because it was caused reputational damage. But these laws were repealed. And so women then did not have as much legal recourse if they got engaged, had their reputations tarnished, and then were left at the altar, so to speak. And so the first marketing campaigns were big on, this is your way of getting a guarantee from him. He wouldn't be putting this kind of money in this if he wasn't serious. And then in the 1940s, they invented the slogan, "A diamond is forever." And coincidentally, we also had World War II. And so you had a lot of men going off to war, but they were leaving their girlfriends and wives at home. And so this was another way for both parties involved to say, look, I'm going to be thinking about you. I'm going to keep you top of mind. Like here's like a token of my affection for you to look at and think of me. And so they got super, super sappy in their marketing campaigns, and they partnered with a lot of movie stars and radio stars, and it worked really well.
So do you think Big Diamond is behind World War II? Like, do you think they started World War II for this purpose?
I think since the US stayed out of it for so long, I don't think we could really pin this on them, but they definitely did a lot of other heinous stuff, which I will get to. Zoe, come in here with the unhinged hot takes. Okay, so they invented the diamond engagement ring as a concept, and then over the next, 20, 30 years, they really pushed it. They had a lot of good, successful marketing campaigns. I'm going to show you a graph of the share of brides who receive a diamond engagement ring when they're getting proposed to. And could you describe this for me?
So it's the number of brides who received a diamond engagement ring broken up by decade, more or less, on the x-axis. The y-axis is the percentage, and in 1939, so at the very beginning of this advertisement before World War II, it's only 10%. And then we hit 1950s and we're up to 30%. And by the 60s, it's 50%. And in 1990, it's 80%.
Exactly. So this really wasn't a thing before the marketing campaign. It was 10% of brides were getting a diamond ring as part of their engagement. But the latest stats I saw was somewhere between 85 to 87% of brides are now receiving diamond engagement rings. So it was super successful.
By those 10%, like, do you know what that tradition was stemming from? Like, whose thought was it to be like, take this ring as a sign of my love?
Oh, yeah. So before the marketing campaign started back in the 1930s, people still would give jewelry or like tokens of affection. I think it was just like, some percent of people might get a necklace, that sort of thing, or maybe they'd get some sort of ring. Diamonds at that time before this marketing campaign were really considered like just rich people things, but they managed to really capture the market, and now it's basically ubiquitous. So the first fact that I think is super interesting is just that this is a marketing campaign that is literally so popular that they like teach it in schools for people who are trying to get like business or marketing degrees. Like there are case studies on this. Like this is one of the best marketing campaigns ever.
Them and Lady Gaga, who my husband learned about when he was getting his MBA.
You'll have to tell us that story another time too. I'm so curious what they taught him.
Actually, it may have been Taylor Swift, or both of them. I'm not sure the story. I just know that he learned about one or both of them in his business school, and that was an engineer-heavy population. Not
the right audience, but I mean, they are both phenomenal business people. They've led very successful careers, so I understand. But yeah, the diamond campaign is less than 100 years old. And so that is the first tidbit. Like, this is not a time-tested tradition. We're kind of on, like, the third generation of people now who have them. Like, your grandmothers, a decent amount of them may have diamond engagement rings, but their mothers probably didn't. And even of our grandmothers, like, looking at the chart, the people who were getting engaged in the 60s, that was, only, like, 50%? So, like, flip a coin on if your grandmother even has a diamond engagement ring.
What year was your grandmother born in?
This is the part where Zoe and I talk about how different our parents are in age. Okay, well then your grandparents are even less. You're flipping like multiple coins. My grandparents and my parents both had their kids young. It's fine. So anyhow, that is talk track number 1.
This is less than 100 years old. This whole tradition of the diamond engagement ring. It is a diamond mogul in South Africa who said, "More money, please. Those Americans are suckers."
100%. Yep.
And here we are today.
Zoe's showing off her ring on camera. Okay, so the second thing I want to talk about is where the diamonds are coming from. And this is an area that you probably have heard of headlines on already. So, Zoe, have you heard of the term blood diamonds?
I have. I have just taken it to mean that it's a shady business and people have died for something as frivolous as a diamond.
Yep. I mean, that's a good one-sentence summary, but a couple stats to round that out. So first off, of all of the things that could be caught up in conflict, diamonds are one of the easiest ones to smuggle. You could have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of diamonds on your body and be naked and people wouldn't be able to find them, which you can't really do with any other property. Zoe's shaking her head at me right now. But like, think of how hard it would be to smuggle literally anything else that's worth $1 million. Like, I have a piece of art, you can't just like tuck that up your butthole. You're not swallowing that. So they're incredibly easy to smuggle. And so as a result of that, it is incredibly easy to forge where they were mined. If a group were to control a diamond mine, that means that they have access to high-value goods, super easy to smuggle, which they could then exchange for contraband. In the 1980s, it was estimated that 20% of all diamonds were mined in conflict zones and then smuggled out of them. And That is a minority, but it's a pretty large minority. And that means that 1 in 5 diamonds were coming from a situation. And we're not just talking like, oh, they have a little bit of a war. We're talking about situations where whole towns of people were being lined up and either shot and killed or, raped and murdered, or they had their hands and noses and ears chopped off. So it was a really, really bloody situation, and Sierra Leone in particular had a brutal civil war.
And it's all over who owns the diamond mill?
Yeah, who had the diamond mines, which is different than other civil wars. Typically, civil wars are like an oppressed people wants to overtake the government so that they get more rights or something like that. But in this case, it was about control of the resource because the resource gave them wealth. And so then if you were a member of the gang and you owned the diamond mine, you could smuggle those diamonds, you could get weapons, you could get mansions, you could, do whatever you wanted with that money. And so it was particularly lawless and went on for a long time, and a lot of people lost their limbs or their lives. After this was exposed in the late 1990s, a group formed in 2003 called the Kimberley Process, which was trying to monitor the situation and certify diamonds to say these are conflict-free. And it's a really, really good idea on paper, but one of the founding groups, Global Witness, actually withdrew in 2011 because they decided that the Kimberley Process was too narrowly defined. So today, when you're trying to buy a diamond, you may hear that actually it's conflict-free, we have paperwork, it's been certified, but the paperwork and certification is really only focused on gangs usurping a government. They don't allow for governments using their diamond mines to control their own people, or situations where something other than a rough diamond is being mined. So it's not necessarily reducing all violence. It's really only reducing one type of violence.
Can you, define it? What was the Kimberley Law saying, and what were they mad about? Can you just, articulate that a little more?
Yeah, so this process worked similar to a certification. So it's not think of free trade, where you could buy free trade coffee beans, and it means that the workers were paid a living wage. And free trade is an organization that partners with the farmers and the coffee growers to certify them. And then it makes you, the consumer, feel better about buying that coffee because you know that the workers were paid a living wage. And so it's kind of similar, where they were like, we will certify these diamonds. We will be the one organization. And countries that want to sell their diamonds on the international market will have to certify with us and be audited and prove that they're not breaking our rules. And then when they do that, we'll give them the green stamp. And then they'll also have these paper trails that will be able to follow the diamonds throughout the process.
And what was the rule?
It had to be a rebel group trying to take over the government using the sale of rough diamonds in order for them to be disqualified from the Kimberley Process.
Very specifically, those 3 things.
Yeah. So you could have a group where the legitimate government is controlling a mine, and that is preventing oppression of their people, like happened in Zimbabwe, but Zimbabwe was still certified. Or you could have a situation where child labor practices were involved, or human rights conditions were being violated, but since it wasn't about a rebel group trying to take over the government, again, that wouldn't disqualify them. So that is why Global Witness wound up withdrawing. So we have a certification process, and it makes us feel good. In my mind, I think it's kind of more like an organic label or a recycling label on plastic than it is a true, thorough vetting process.
And that certification is literally we can give you this piece of paper when you buy this diamond that says this is a real diamond.
Yep. Yeah. Kimberley Process certified, thumbs up.
Yeah. And I mean, I was also going directly to food labels, free range chicken. They have 2 square feet to roam, as opposed to a chicken wire pen kind of thing. They're a little better off, but clinically significant, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's a really good other example and good context, which is this is better than nothing. I'm glad we have the Kimberley Process. By their narrow definition, we have reduced the amount of conflict from 20% of all diamonds down to less than 1%. So that's amazing. but it doesn't necessarily move us as far as we need to go to really feel good about it. Because again, that less than 1% is only defining violence in that very narrow way. So the remaining 99% could still have child labor, could still be governments taking advantage of their citizens, etc.
Is that 20 to 1% the real figures? Because that's pretty good.
It is really good, but I think I'm just trying to point out that those figures are defining conflict so narrowly that less than 1% really leaves the remaining 99% to still contain other forms of conflict. So that's where diamonds came from. That's why we have them in engagement rings. I also then want to talk about the financial element of this. And Zoe, when you were researching for your ring, did you have a good sense of how much they cost? Did you have any rules of thumb you were going for? Did you hope that Andrew would spend a certain amount or get you something of a certain size? How did you approach the financial element of this when you were talking?
My husband is cheap. And so I knew anything would be out of his comfort zone. It was a 4-figure cost. It was not anything. It was not 5 figures. And I think I was pretty reasonable in my ask. Privilege being relative, whatever. I don't think I was being unreasonable, but that's always my perspective that butts heads with his cheap ass.
Well, if this makes you any happier, you should share this with him. Here's the median amount spent by income bracket, and all income brackets are spending at least 4 figures according to this data set, and the income bracket where the household income is $200K or higher is spending 5 figures on average on their diamond engagement ring.
And you said this is median? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is median, not average, but hard to say on median.
Okay. Yeah, I was being pretty reasonable.
Oh, you were being super reasonable. But this is still a lot of money.
I'm not denying that. This is a useless piece of jewelry that I wear every day.
It brings you joy. But yeah, you are super reasonable in your ask, and it seems like a lot of people are spending in the mid 4 figures for their ring.
And as an aside, one of my friends is like in the middle of like shopping for an engagement ring, and I was talking to her boyfriend, and he's like, well, yeah, if a $50,000 engagement ring is what would have made her happy, I would have happily gotten that from her. And I was like, no, that is ridiculous.
That's a lot of money. Sounds
that
like he didn't actually...
most of the wedding. Yeah. Half the wedding.
It sounds like he didn't need to spend that, hopefully.
It could be 5 figures. I don't think it's 50 grand. I have no idea. But the thought that he would have been okay with that, like, blew my mind.
Yeah. Find me a man who has 50 grand lying around. Yeah. I mean, the confidence intervals on those medians were probably very large. But yeah, so you spend all this money, and then what happens afterwards? What if the engagement gets called off? What do you do with your ring? One of the original reasons that people were pitched the engagement ring in the first place was as collateral of like, oh, if he leaves you at the altar, at least you like, you know, have this pretty expensive thing that you could sell and like pay for your life for a bit. But it turns out that's actually not true. And diamond engagement rings are more like a car that you drive off the lot and it immediately loses half of its value, more than a durable asset like gold or some silver.
So is the gold band that my diamond is sitting upon more valuable, and should I have gotten a thicker band? Is that what you're telling me?
Your gold band will hold its value better than the diamond will.
I've never been good at finances and assets, so...
Yeah, but not everything has to be a financial decision. Sometimes it can be a decision from the heart. But in practice, the diamond engagement ring, if you were to try and resell it, it would resell for 20 to 60% of the original price you paid. So if you bought yourself, or if you had a $5,000 ring bought for you, then you would be able to sell that back for $1,000 at most. You know, $2,000.
And I think you're going to get there. But is there, like, what component is, like, the bad juju of the engagement ring being called off versus, like, the actual value of the rock?
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of the two. I think part of it is there's not really a robust resale market. Like, where are you going to sell it? Are you just going to put it on Facebook Marketplace? Like, then there is bad juju. Nobody wants your used engagement ring in that sense. Also, the diamond industry controls the resale market. Like, they would buy it back from you, but they're not going to pay you what they paid for it because they want to get their money. And so they're the ones, like, you'd probably go back to the jeweler and be like, can you, like, I don't need this anymore. And then they're going to be like, I'll give you $100 for it. But then the third thing is that styles change, but your diamond doesn't. And so if you get a diamond that's like super stylish today, but in 20 years a different cut is in fashion, you can't turn around and resell that diamond for the same amount you paid for it because people don't want it anymore in that style. Like something like gold, you can reform it into a different shape. And so your gold is a lot more long lasting of an investment
literally
piece.
Malleable.
Yeah. And your diamonds are literally not. They're 10 out of 10 on the hardness scale. And so this is a pretty artificial market. The only reason that diamonds cost as much as they do is because we believe they should. Like, because we've been told for so long that diamonds are like a scarce and hot commodity. But as we know already from the earlier part of this conversation, they're not. Like, the De Beers decided to keep the artificial scarcity in place.
Are they still doing that? Do you know?
To the extent possible, they're no longer 90% monopoly. They still have a monopoly, but it's a lesser percent. But I'm going to get to the real existential threat to their business value as my next data point.
Jackie. It's Jackie Andrews. It's just going to be a picture of Jackie.
It's just going to be this podcast. It's just going to be people hearing this going, God damn it, I don't want a diamond engagement ring anymore. I could spend that $50,000 on something else. So the existential threat to the diamond industry is, drumroll please, lab-grown diamonds. This might not be a surprise, but maybe it is.
I actually forgot these existed. And I was like, what is this threat? What is going to show up on my screen?
This was super fascinating to me when I learned about it. Typically, things go up in price, right? That's called inflation. And if you think of general goods and services since the year 2020, I think things have gone up a lot in price. Like, wasn't it like 5% a year? So like compound, I think we're probably at like, I'm not looking this up, don't quote me on it, but we're probably in like the 10 to 20% range in the last 5 years, like a really meaningful amount of inflation. So Zoe, I have a graph on the screen right now of the price of diamonds, both natural and lab grown. Can you talk to me about the trends you are seeing in each of these from the year 2020 through the end of 2025?
Well, I think it's important that we realize what the x-axis is, which is 5 years. And I don't know when the first lab-grown diamond hit the market, but it took, I would say there was some, and the y-axis is price. And the lab-grown diamond has decreased in value 75%. And with that, it took the natural diamond down 25%.
Yeah.
So a real diamond is still more valuable, but the price took a hit because we can make a lab-grown diamond and it's just chemistry. So it's all carbon molecules under a very pressurized system. So it's essentially the same thing.
It's literally the same thing. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So at the same 5 years that everything else is raising in price by double-digit percentages, we're seeing double-digit decreases in the price of natural diamonds as a result of lab-grown diamonds. And so in 2020, at the left point of this graph, lab-grown diamonds made up about 3% of all diamond sales. But in 2025, they made up 15%, which is still small, but that's all diamond sales, not just engagement rings. And it's rapidly growing. So lab-grown diamonds and real diamonds are exactly the same from a chemical structure. They have the same exact hardness, the same exact shape, and all that.
Crystalline structure.
Yep, exactly. But lab grown, to your point, like you said, they were made in a lab, and so they can be produced a lot cheaper, especially as we're seeing more and more of them enter the market. The process is getting more efficient. And so this is the threat that De Beers tried to head off at the end of the 1800s when they consolidated and tried to artificially control scarcity. Now they don't control the lab-grown diamonds, and so they no longer can keep that scarcity alive, which is what is driving the prices down. So if you want to buy a diamond engagement ring, don't do it yet. Wait. Deflation, everybody.
Is De Beers really still the strongman in the natural diamond market?
They're definitely still up there. I can put it in the show notes, but a lot of brands that you know and love are subsidiaries of De Beers. We just don't, they're the parent company, so we don't see them on the branding. But all that to say, a lab-grown diamond and a real diamond. A lab-grown diamond and a mined diamond are exactly the same. You're going to be able to get a lot more bang for your buck from a lab-grown diamond, and there's going to be no blood diamond issues. The downside to lab-grown diamonds is if they are not made using renewable energy, they are pretty energy intensive. So this is not necessarily the best choice if you are trying to protect the environment. But there's a lot of different trade-offs here. So, you can't win them all.
Which do you value more, your carbon footprint or your humanitarian aid?
Yep. That's really the trade-off we're doing. I mean, the thing is, the mined diamonds aren't good for the planet either. It's not like they're like squeaky clean on that front and just bad in the humanitarian aid front. They're like pretty bad on both. It's just that the energy expenditure for a lab-grown diamond is like even worse. So all this to say, I personally do not want a diamond engagement ring. I do not think it is a good investment of money, considering it will not retain its value. I could think of a lot of things that I could do with $5,000 or $10,000, and me and my partner could do with that money that I personally would get a lot more value from.
What would you do?
I think it depends where we are in our life and if we want to buy a house in the very expensive city we're living in right now. I think if that is our choice, I would say like every spare penny should go into the house. I don't think that'll be our choice. So if not that, then honestly, probably the wedding. Like I care much more about having a good time with my family and friends than I do about a piece of jewelry. And this comes down to my personal value of like, I wear some jewelry, but it's like they're gold plated. Like I don't own anything that costs more than $100 except the Aura ring, but that's not really jewelry, that's tech.
And going back to the juju of it all, that necklace is from an ex.
We're bringing that up? Okay, yeah. I mean, I still wear it. It's a nice necklace. Yeah, like I can't resell it. That's the point, Zoe. I gotta just keep wearing it. And you can re-wear a necklace that you get from an ex. You can't re-wear an engagement ring. So yeah, I think personally I would rather put the extra $5,000 or $10,000 into the wedding because weddings are so expensive, and I think that's also a scam. I'm saying as somebody who's never paid for a wedding or had one. But yeah, it comes down to what people want. And
what if your boyfriend is like, fuck, like I really wish I could just get Jackie an engagement ring. What if I was like, well, what about like an antique store? Because there's, grandma's old engagement ring there, and at least that's recycled.
Assuming his grandmother's young enough to have an engagement ring, as we discussed.
It's your grandmother, not mine.
Yeah, I would be open to a hand-me-down ring because nobody spent any money on it. I personally, when I'm feeling particularly puritanical, am like, I don't want to wear anything with a diamond on it because that's like feeding into the image that this is the thing that everybody should do. So even if it's a hand-me-down, people don't know that no money was spent on it. I mean, they could probably tell by looking at it. It's not going to look like a ring from today. But yeah, I don't love the idea of feeding into the idea that everybody needs to have the ring. And I really like the idea of having something very obviously, visibly non-traditional.
What about like a necklace with his name or with a J on it?
Yeah. I think something like that would be cute. Yeah, I mean, we could also, I didn't go into it here, but like gold is also not the most ethically or environmentally friendly produced material. So,
what will your wedding band be then?
I will have gold. But you can recycle gold a lot easier than you can recycle diamonds. So yeah, I still think after doing all this research, I come out a little bit more, I come out more austere than most people do. But I'm hoping that as people are deciding what they want, if they have a little bit more of this knowledge, then they have a little bit more freedom to not feel guilty about wanting something that's not mainstream. Like if people want to go lab grown, it is literally the same thing. It is the better environment or better human rights choice, and it is the better financial choice than a mined diamond. And so like I know that there's a little bit of a stigma around, well, I want the real thing, but it's literally still the real thing. So hopefully people who want one, and especially if you want a big one, like just go lab grown. Then you can get a big honkin' diamond for half the price. And like you'll still be able to look really cool. You'll still have a giant stone on your hand. So if that's important to you, like that is a really good way to do that without breaking the bank. Oh, and I did read a paper that found small but statistically significant decreases in marital happiness associated with increases in ring spending. So your friend whose partner is willing to spend $50,000, tell him if he does, they're going to be less happy than if he spends less.
That's so interesting. It's like the longer the Instagram posts, like more miserable you are. I wonder if it's like he's realizing like what a materialistic drag he's marrying.
Yeah. I think it's also just like money is one of the biggest reasons for divorce. So if you are splashing the cash for a flashy piece of jewelry that you aren't actually in a position to be able to afford comfortably, then
they want the Beamer, they want the Aloe Yoga, they want the power, the like core strength Pilates subscription. They're getting the gel manicure every 2 weeks.
Well, let's talk about Botox and fillers. Like
Botox. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, and yeah, we don't need to make this gendered. It could also be about him being bad with the money. But yeah, I think if you're
Porsche, he wants to go golfing.
Yeah. If you're not as good with your money and you're trying to live above your means, then you're also more likely to be experiencing financial struggles, which is more likely to lead to divorce. So yeah, if it's in your means and you want to do it, you should go for it. But if it's outside of your means, even if society is telling you you need it, society is literally a less than 100-year-old marketing campaign. So like, fuck it. So that's my spiel. What do you think, Zoe? How are you feeling about your ring now that I have just unearthed all this dirt on diamond engagement rings?
I feel the same. This is all capitalism. What is this ring?
De Beers.
De Beers it's literally the American dream. This is all capitalism. They found the best advertising scheme known to man, and no billionaire got their billions in a savory way. That's why Dolly Parton isn't a billionaire. And like, yes, the blood diamonds of it all, the gangs of it all, it's horrible. It is akin to the Casting Couch and the Jeffrey Epstein, but we're also going to watch the movies. Like, this is just the reality of American society. And it's just, as you get older, you have to choose where your priorities lie. And for Jackie, this is one of them. She doesn't want to give into this capitalist paradigm.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, this is a piece of jewelry you wear every day. You're super happy with it. You got the ring of your dreams. It was in a budget that you guys could comfortably afford. You are happily married. You get to show off that you're happily married and participate in this societal expectation of you. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that you were thoughtful enough in the process that you didn't wind up, telling your husband to spend $50,000 on something and then wind up regretting it or whatever. Like, I imagine that this is it would be really bad to lose it, but it's also like, wouldn't break the bank if something were to happen to it, in the same way that something that would be super out of your price point would just like be too nice to ever lose. So I think you approached it the right way.
And we're still friends despite it.
Oh, I think because of it. I think as I'm getting older, I'm learning to mellow, and something that is right for me does not need to be right for everybody. But I do generally think as long as that people who are making big decisions just need to like think about why they're making the decision. And in Zoe's case, it was really obvious that this is the thing that she wanted, and here's the reasons why, and here's what she got, and she's really happy with it. But if there is somebody who's listening to this who's like, I don't know, I don't really want to lose that much money, or like, I want a really big ring, but I don't know how to ask my partner for it. Like, it, you know, if you're like kind of in the middle, in the gray zone, I'm hoping that this gives more clarity and more like freedom to make the choice that actually like resonates. Like, if you don't wear jewelry, you probably don't need a big engagement ring. Like, when are you going to wear it? Is this something that you're actually going to want? Like, I have multiple friends who just have silicone bands or just have a wedding band and nothing else. And that works for them. And I think that's beautiful.
Whereas I would be pissed if that's all Andrew wore. Because there's the other side to it where I find a man with a wedding band so attractive. Not in the sense of like, ooh, that's like forbidden fruit, but in the sense of like, that's someone who goes home to a wife and probably kids and like is a family, and like there's a whole side of this person who's probably like really tender and fun that I don't see. Like, that's not for me to see. And that's what I love about seeing like a wedding band on a man as well.
Do you feel like a woman with only a wedding band would still elicit that same sort of feeling from you? I know you're talking about men, but like, do you see a difference between a woman who has an engagement ring and a wedding band versus a woman with just a wedding band?
No. I also judge the shit out of a woman based off of her engagement ring. So it's almost better for her from me that she only has a wedding band.
Okay, this is good. Zoe's going to approve of my future choices, at least. Before we wrap this up, if you are, what's the opposite of diamond curious? If you're like alternative to diamond curious, if you're like, I actually think I kind of want to err on the side of not giving into blood diamonds.
Yeah, like what about your birthstone or something?
Yeah, I think birthstones are a great idea. They make up a significantly smaller portion of the gemstone market, so they're much less likely to be turned into like a giant conflict stone because there's less of a market for them. There's always the lab diamonds, there's always alternative like cubic zirconia, that sort of thing. You could get a ring that doesn't have any stones in it. So I think there's a lot of ring-based options. You could also do a necklace, you could do a bracelet, you could go on a bougie vacation. There's a lot of things you could spend your money on. Or not, yeah, or just save it. Life is expensive enough. Don't feel pressured to spend 4 to 5 figures on a rock. Like, think of how far 4 to 5 figures could go in your retirement account. So Zoe, do you have advice for your 20-year-old self?
I think one of the things I have to accept about myself is that I have expensive taste and I like nice things. For the most part, I can keep myself away from the brands unless it's like UGG, in which case I'm a sucker. But I think it's okay to like reasonably like nice things. That is okay. You don't need to lie to yourself about it. You can incorporate it in your life in a responsible way.
Yeah. I mean, it's to your point, I think the responsibility is key. It's your personal self-expression. And as long as you can afford it and like are still saving for retirement, then like you will be happier and more contented by admitting to yourself what you like. She wants a horse, everybody.
And for the record, I started the dachshund trend. I had my first dachshund when I was 8, so kiss my ass. What about you, Jackie? What's your advice? I mean, I've noticed that you're, as you've said, remarkably softer in this opinion, and I can attest to that.
That's good. Yeah, poor Zoe heard the fire and brimstone version of this speech back before she got engaged, and she still went with the ring, which takes a lot of bravery, and I commend you for that because you made the choice that was right for you, and that must have been hard.
No, I don't give a shit.
She doesn't care about my opinion, everybody.
Jackie's wrath means nothing to me.
I need to learn how to guilt her or something. Use a different mechanism. Clearly wrath isn't working. My advice for my 20-year-old self, I mean, it is like tone it down a little bit. Like, think about who your audience is and what you're trying to achieve. If I was actually trying to change people's minds, the fire and brimstone doesn't work. Like, we are operating in a world where 85% of married women have engagement rings. So like, that is an incredibly hard gravitational pull to escape. And so if I want to be effective in advocating for change, I need to be more careful in how I'm doing that and like think of the audience and put myself in their shoes more and recognize that like just because I would go 0 to 100 and go like I'm gonna completely never ever wear engagement rings or diamonds ever again, like that's not fair to expect from other people. And so like every little step in that direction is still positive change, and like how can I meet them where they're at more? I think that is one conclusion.
What if, to bring it back to the beginning, you started shoveling out all the other parking spots?
So, fun fact, I usually do that.
Oh. See, Jackie puts her money where her mouth is.
Yeah. And when I was talking about this with my boyfriend earlier, he recommended if I came across the person who'd had that really snarky note, I could just be like, hey, it says you have a lot of time on your hands. I'm going to go shovel out the empty spaces. Do you want to join me? Like that is...
You could just slip a Post-it note inside of his note.
I could do that too. And I could just be like, hey, I'm going to go shovel out the empty parking spaces. Let me know if you want to join, since it sounds like you got a lot of time and snow on your hands.
I mean, I would be ruder. I'd be like, hey, asshole, why don't you try helping out for once?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the approach that I would do, but I'm trying to take a page out of my boyfriend's book, who is much better at the people skills than I am. And
he grew up in the army.
He learned how to make people feel comfortable and like bring them along on his journey. I brute force my opinions on people. He's very much like, what if we all shared the same opinion? And that balance is great. So yeah, I think learning how to evangelize other people by getting them to see my side because I am seeing their side is really the solution. And that involves shoveling and also accepting and loving my friends when they get diamond engagement rings.
And, you know, feeling confident in your decision without having the justification from others.
Yeah. Because to your point, if you're in the minority, you probably will have to justify it. People will be like, oh, you got engaged? I can't tell. And I'll have to be like, oh, actually, it's because blah, blah, blah. And like, I am taking on a lot of burden, but I can feel confident in doing that because it aligns with my values and I've thought about it.
Yeah, it's just as simple as like, I didn't want an engagement ring. And it's like not their business. Because it's like really uncomfortable when I'm at the Christmas party after getting engaged. It's like, let me see it. It's like, I don't know you, but like you are literally using, to go back to what I just said, you are literally using this just to judge me. This has nothing to do with you.
That is such a weird practice. I think it's so odd when they're like, oh my God, you got engaged? Show me the ring, instead of like, tell me how he did it. How are you feeling? Like, I don't know, tell me how amazing your love is. And like all of those would be probably relatively invasive. So like we just default to looking at the ring, but that's still weird.
It's also weird. And don't get me wrong, I want to see what their ring looks like too. But it's just weird. It's like asking what you brought for lunch. Like I hate when people are like, what did you bring for lunch? What are you eating right now? Like I'm eating a fucking Lara bar. Go away.
Yeah. Accurate. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. This was our podcast, Aftermash. I'm Jackie.
I'm Zoe. And Jay is our faceless sound engineer, without whom this show would be nothing.
Yeah, we couldn't do this without you, Jay. So thank you. And to our listeners, subscribe, like, follow, and check out the show notes if you want any of the references we talked about. And yeah, catch you next time.
That's at Aftermash Pod.
At Aftermash Pod on wherever you get your social media. Thanks.